Here we are once again. You decided to tune into a Workshop Wasteland Tricks or Treats video. And today, I don't know if this is a trick or a treat, but I think you're probably going to enjoy it. So, as you probably have seen in some videos, I have a lot of chainsaws. I have a passion for chainsaws. I love running them. There's nothing that feels more powerful in your hands than a chainsaw. So, I thought I would just do a little bit of very basic kind of how-to stuff with chainsaws. Sort of start out at the low level, and if people enjoy it, we can build ourselves up to some more advanced things like maybe porting a chainsaw, modifying the muffler, stuff like that. So in today's video, we're primarily going to talk about the chain in or on a chainsaw, and a little bit about it, some of the things that you need to know, and some of the things that are going to help you to A, keep it tight, and B, sharpen it correctly. Everything in this video is my opinion. I do have a decent amount of experience running chainsaws. My parents burnt a ton of firewood in my life, and I helped cut the majority of it. So, literally, I've ran chainsaws a good bit. I am no master chainsaw sharpener. However, I can make a chain cut pretty darn good, and overall, in the grand scheme of things, it always worked for me. So I'd be willing to bet if you follow what I have to show you, it will also work for you. So first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about fuel and oil for a chainsaw. So of course, almost all chainsaws are two-stroke engines, which means you have a mixture of gasoline and two-cycle oil. And that's where it gets the lubrication inside the engine to keep everything working correctly. So again, my personal opinion, what I really like to use is 100 low lead avgas, aviation fuel, from a local airport that you may have. 100 low lead, guaranteed ethanol free, has a pretty darn good shelf life, and I think it's something around 95-96% octane, which is a little bit higher than the typical 87 octane that you're going to buy at the gas pumps at your local gas station. So I think the most important part is whatever fuel you buy for small engines like chainsaws, generators, lawnmowers, weed whackers, whatever it might be, use ethanol-free fuel. It's going to save you so much headache in the long run with your carburetor, especially on something that sits over the winter or sits for extended periods of time. Ethanol turns into jelly, and then it turns into crystals, and it ruins carburetors. So if you want to save yourself a lot of hassle, use ethanol-free fuel. Like I said, I choose to use 100 low lead in chainsaws, weed whackers, anything that's a two-stroke. I really think that it works well, and overall, like I said, guaranteed ethanol free. I use this Maxim K2, Maxim Formula K2 two-cycle oil. I mix everything for everything that I own at 40-1. Not saying that's what you should do. Not saying that's the best in the whole wide world. What I am saying is that it's worked very well for me. Either way, 50-1 is what most everything in today's two-stroke world calls for. I know there's like the Stihl HP Ultra, all kinds of other stuff that you can use, tons of off-the-shelf two-cycle oil. They all work okay. In the grand scheme of things, I believe two-cycle oil geared more towards like two-stroke dirt bike racing, four-wheeler racing, I believe personally is a better oil. I'm sure lots of people will argue that many, many different ways, but it works for me. When I pull spark plugs out, they're nice and clean, nice chocolatey brown color. I don't see a lot of carbon buildup in anything that I've torn apart, so take that for what it's worth, but I think this is the way to go. So moving on to some things about the chain. First and foremost, I'd say your most common pitch and gauge chains on your saw are 3/8 pitch or 325 pitch, which is .325. Typically, 50cc and under chainsaws seem to have 325 pitch chain, and then your larger stuff typically has 3/8 pitch chain. That's not standard, that's just kind of a bit of a loose golden rule. However, the majority of the time on the side of a chainsaw bar, or even sometimes printed on the saw, it's going to tell you what pitch, what gauge, and how many drive lengths you need for your chain. So let's take a look at what some of that might mean. So the gauge of a chain is really, if I understand it correctly, the distance between three rivets. So that is the gauge, or I'm sorry, that is the pitch. It also deals with the geometry of the cutter and some other things like that. And then the gauge is the thickness of the drive link that goes in the bar. And then, of course, the number of drive links is basically how long is the chain. It can't be too long, or else you can't get it tight on the saw, and it can't be too short, or you won't be able to get it on the saw. So if you recently purchased the chainsaw and you haven't swapped out the bar, or no one else has, likely it's on the side of the bar, and or it's on the chainsaw itself. A lot of the newer stuff comes that way. So worst case scenario, if you're super stumped on that, do a little bit of Googling on the internet. You can see pictures of how to measure the length of the links to determine if you have 404, 3/8, 325, whatever the case might be. But in my case, my chainsaw is 325 gauge, 325 pitch, 50 gauge, and I believe it's 72 drive links. This is an Echo 4910, and it has a 20-inch bar, but that's not like a universal standard for a 20-inch bar. Different companies use a different number of drive links, so your mileage might vary on that. Moving down onto the saw, a little bit more nomenclature, things that you need to know. This is, of course, the bar. A lot of people call it a blade. I don't think that's correct terminology, but I guess if you call it a blade, it's not the end of the world. But this is a bar. This is, of course, our chain. This chainsaw has 2 bar nuts down here. That's what you tighten up to keep the bar tight. And my tension adjusting screw is back here. Some of them are up here in the front of the bar cover. So you're just going to have to look and see where it's at. Typically, it's a flathead screwdriver, what you need on there. If you didn't get one of these with your saw, this is called a scrench. Reason being, it's a screwdriver and it's a wrench. Typically, spark plugs come out with this side, bar nuts get tightened with this side. Again, not guaranteed, but a scrench will probably get you through what you need to do. So right now you can see my chain is pretty loose, and you don't want to run it this loose. This is asking for the chain to skip off of the bar and throw the chain off the bar and kind of ruin your day. So maybe you're asking yourself, well, how do you tighten it up? So again, this is my opinion. This is what I was taught by my dad. I'm not saying this is the gospel truth, but if you do this, I just about guarantee you it's going to work. So what I like to do first and foremost is lift the tip of my bar up so that I'm holding it up to the point that it's trying to lift up the saw. So you can see how much looser that chain got whenever I lifted it up. I, of course, loosened this for the video, but you get the idea. Then you need to turn your tensioning screw the other way, though. In my case, I'm turning it clockwise. I'm still holding pressure up on the bar. You want to turn your tensioning screw. This is kind of hard to do with the camera in my way. But turn the tensioning screw until with the bar lifted up, you pull the chain. You pull the chain just like that. Notice how it's slapping up against the bar and it's staying there, but it's not so tight that I can't pull it back down. I'm actually going to give that just a snug more. So that's pretty darn good. That's with the chain, or with the bar pulled up. I'm tightening it until it drags the chain up into the bar. And then you tighten up your bar nuts. You don't have to go like stupid tight on these, but they need to be pretty darn tight because after all, this is holding the tension of your chain. So good and tight, but a lot of the times it's just going into plastic or aluminum, so you don't want to tighten them up too much. Then take your scrench, give this a bit of a spin, make sure it moves free, and check your chain for tension. And that's about where I keep mine. I think that's tight enough, but it's also not too tight, and I believe in the grand scheme of things, that's exactly where it needs to be. With a new chain and a new bar, you do need to check this periodically because they're going to wear in together. You're going to get wear on your bar, you're going to get some stretch in your chain. It is going to get loose over time, so you're going to have to check that as you're using your saw. Overall, though, there's not a lot more to it than that. I just wanted to show you, as we're looking at the saw right here, the chain is going to move forward and it's going to come around the bottom. So if you look at a chain link, This is a cutter on the chain link. You want this to be pointed forward. It's really easy to put a chain on backwards. It fits just as good backwards as it does forward. So this is the right way to put your chain on. This little shark's tooth is sticking forward, and the blunt flat side is sticking towards the back on the top of the chain. So make sure you put this on correctly, or obviously it's not gonna cut. And that's about it for today's video. There's not a whole lot to tensioning the chain on a chainsaw. So as always, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate you stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you in tomorrow's video.